begin on Daf Pei Amid Base, about 6-7 lines from the bottom. In the Mishnah it said, actually about 8, and the Mishnah had said that a reed, enough to make a kulmus, a pen, a quill, would be sufficient. So Tana kulmus amagia l'kisher etzbaisav. Brisa says that this kulmus would have to be the size that can reach his joints. But which joints? Boya Ravashi Kesher Elyon, the upper joint, meaning the joint between the palm and the fingers. Or Kesher Atachton, or a really small pen that can that would reach his finger knuckle. Teku, no. We have a unknown question here. We don't know the answer. Tishbi Tarz Kushis Vivah. Ava says if it was very thick or broken apart, and so then if you carried enough of the reed that you can use as kindling to cook an egg. Satana trufa, the rice says it is scrambled b'shemen and with oil, and in a pot. So that would cook much quicker. So it requires less kindling. But it says a light egg, an easy egg to cook. What type of egg is that? So he said the egg of a tziltzala, which is a type of bird, which is small. So my time, what's the reason you chose that bird? Because it's small. So maybe it's another small bird. The tzipor. Ishtik. He was silent. He said back to him, did you learn something about this? This is what Rav Sheshes had said. Beitza tarnagolas, a egg of a chicken. And that cooks quickly. That's the quickest egg to cook. If you scramble it and put oil in it and put it in a pot, it'll cook the quickest. So why is it called an easy or a quick egg? Because the Chachamim assessed and said that there is no quicker egg to bake than to cook than that. And why is it that in all other measures of Shabbos, the minimum amount you have to carry is grogeres, which is a fig size, and over here you say it's a beitza, it's an egg size. The Gemara understood when it said the amount to cook an egg, that it's the size of an egg. No, what it means is a grogeres amount of the easy egg to cook. You're going to pay aleph on an aleph in the Mishnah. Etzem, how much bone would someone need to carry in order for it to be significant? Kedei lasas tarvet, enough to make a spoon. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, kedei lasamenu chaf, is enough to make a key. Now, and the Gemara is going to explain, it's not talking about the entire key, but rather just the tooth of the key. Zechuches, glass, kedei ligra b'rosh karkar, enough to sharpen and scrape the point of the karkar. Now, the karkar was something we mentioned a few days ago. When weaving, sometimes the threads would cross or the threads would be too far apart. So they had a pointy tool that was sort of ball round on the handle, and it had a pick at the end on a hook, and that would be used to separate and pick at the threads. So this karkar needs sharpening at times, and that would be done by using glass against it. So if you had enough that you could sharpen the karkar, tzaror or even, a pebble or a rock, kedei lizrak ba'uf, enough to throw at a bird in order to shoo it away from, let's say, your food. To throw enough to throw at an animal, obviously that's larger to scare it away. So the Gemara says, "Remember the shur Rabbi Yehuda Nafish." Rabbi Yehuda over here, who says that for a bone you need to make a key, is larger than making a spoon. So again, you see that Rabbi Yehuda is being more lenient and saying his measure is larger. In order to transgress, you have to carry even more. And less of that would not be a transgression. But we saw earlier that Rabbi Yehuda was strict. And he was saying a smaller measure that even if you carried less, you've already transgressed. Okay, Milan, the Shura Darabanan Nafish. And we saw it was earlier, where do we see that? By the shoe, the measure of the shoe with Gemi, that Rabbi Yehuda said that's enough to transgress, as opposed to needing enough to make a handle, a hook for a calendar. Amar Ula Chafi Pasachas. It doesn't mean the entire key, but rather making the tooth of the key. And the way they would make the key was, the way Rashi seems to be saying, is a simple piece of wood, and they would hollow out small area and stick in the teeth of the key, and that's how they would open the door. So Gemara now says, the teeth, before they are attached to the key, the teeth of a key are going to be tahor. They're not a vessel, not susceptible to tumah, and they're made of bone, and so they're not susceptible to tumah, even if they're when they're flat. They have to be a receptacle. Cover pesachas, but once you made that hole in the wood and you stick the key in, and now it's inside the key, it's tight. Tamei, now it's susceptible to tumah as a vessel, as a finished product, so it's susceptible to tumah. However, v'shel gal, and in regards to a key that is in a fence door, a door of the opening of the gate, and there the key remains inside the fence. It's just sort of like a knob, so that type of key where it's a part of the door. It's not going to be susceptible to tumah. It's attached to the door, and even though it's attached to the door and it's screwed on, so it's a finished product, but nevertheless, it's not going to be susceptible to tumah. Because anything attached to the ground is not susceptible to tumah, as the ground itself is not susceptible to tumah. So once we mentioned keys, we mentioned the halacha that the teeth of the key are not susceptible to tumah until they're a part of the key, and the key itself will only be susceptible to tumah if it's a removable key, or a key that's for a chest or something not attached to the ground. But if the key itself is a part of something attached to the ground, so it's not susceptible to tumah on account of it being mechuber l'karka, attached to the ground. Zechuchis kadei ligra. So he said zechuchis, glass, is in order to smooth out the karka. It's a tanas zechuchis kadei liftzah b'shnei nimim ka'achas. The Brisa says that zechuchis is enough to cut through two threads that are bulging in a weave. We talked about the malacha of petzia in the Mishnah, that there were various opinions of whether it's threads that have they're in spinning more thicker than the rest, and then when they combine it just is a bulge, or they're out of place and they're cut in order to remove them. So that's what, if you have enough sechuchas for that, it would be that would be chayiv. That would be a significant amount of sechuchas to carry because it has a function. Now, what is sechuchas? So some say it's just another pronunciation of zechuchas, which is glass, and zechuchas means pure, clear, and sechuchas is just a stronger form of that, and there are those that say that sechuchas is different. Sechuchas is a mirror. It has glass. It's glass with something opaque behind it, so that it'll reflect. Tzrora even k'dei lizak ba'if. A rock or a stone, if it's enough to throw at a bird. Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Lazar says enough to throw at an animal. It has to be that the animal would feel it. The kamashira, and how much How much does this pebble, rock, stone have to weigh in order to feel the animal to feel it? And Rabbi Elazar Yaakov, mishkel 10 zuz, the weight of 10 zuz. But if it was less than that, that would not count as carrying a significant item when you're carrying a pebble. Zunin, Alabay Madrasha. Zunin came into the academy, and Amalu Rabbi Isai, Avanam Shabbat Sakisa Shiura Mekama. So once we're talking about stones and pebbles, the question is the stones of the bathroom, and they used to use stones as a way to clean themselves after having a bowel movement. So what size would it be? And Rashi says two versions of what this could be in regards to. So whether it's how big would they be in order to carry, to transgress carrying. In other words, you're not allowed to carry them in a public domain because it's significant enough to use for the bathroom. And these would be, as we'll see, vanim kurzelos. They were particularly shaped stones so that they could be used for this function. And what size would be a significant size of stone? So that's the first version of Rashi. The second one is Rashi says that his question was in relation to muktzah. We know the halacha is that stones that have not been designated for a particular purpose or use are muktzah. And his question is what size stones would be permissible to be brought into the bathroom. Amrullah, they said to him, 3 size stones. That's what a person would use, and they were used in sequence because that would be the best way to clean oneself. Kazayas, ke'egas, kabetza, an olive size, and walnut size, and an egg size. Amrullahu v'chitur to Yachnis. What do you want me to bring a scale along to weigh the stones? Talk about a general. So nimnu v'gamra malay hayat. So they concluded that it would be as much as you can fit into one hand. Tanya, Rabbi Yossi, Mikazai's Kagas Kabetza. However, there's a brisa that says indeed Rabbi Yossi held that there would be the 3 sizes mentioned: olive, walnut, and an egg. Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yossi, Meshamaviv Malayat. Rabbi Shimon, son of Rabbi Yossi, said in the name of his father, no, indeed, you need it's a full handful. So the brisa continues. That a person is allowed to bring into a bathroom 3 avanim krizalas, stones that have been properly shaped for bathroom use. He's allowed to bring them in. Either they are within 4 amos, so even though it's in a public domain, even though that it's a public domain, he's allowed to bring them in and carry it because it's less than 4 amos, and that's a permissible amount to carry for the purpose of the bathroom. Even though that generally you can't carry even within 4 amos, you only chayiv d'oraisa, that it's a Torah transgression that you'll be obligated in a chatas and a sin offering if you carried for 4 amos, so they're about approximately 6 feet. But they were saying that less than that, even though that you're not allowed to, but for someone's need, personal need, and for their dignity, they're allowed to carry it up to 4 amos into the bathroom. Or we're talking about in a courtyard where also generally we say you can't carry, but either that it's enclosed and so you can carry, or that the Chachamim allowed it for his personal dignity. And the Brisa says, so what sizes are these stones that he would bring into the bathroom? So Rameh Mekegos, Rameh says walnut size, and Rabbi Yehuda Mekabetza egg size. Amar Rafa Papa Amar Chista Kamachlekas Kan Kamachlekas Be'esr. Just as there's a disagreement of the size here, walnut or egg size, so too by Esra. So the Gemara challenges, what are you talking about? You're comparing Esrog to here. Esrog is an explicit Mishnah. Everybody knows that one. So why are you comparing? Hasam Asnita and Hacham Braisa. Ela kamachlekas be'esrog kach machlekas kan. Rather, it's the other way around. That you want to remember the opinions. They said just as the machlekas by Esrog, which is the machlekas of the size, so too the machlekas over here, the minimum size of an Esrog, so too over here, what's the size of the stone? And they're not really related machlokes, but rather the reason is because the comparison is just there to remember the opinions. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, avoloyas apa'ayis. But even though that a person can take in stones, but you may not take in a clump of clay, a clump of dirt. My pious, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, zira kerisha bavlaisa. It's a clump of Babylonian soil, clay. And the reason is because it falls apart, and so it's not really functional as a cleaning agent. Amar Rava asal mashmash b'tzror b'Shabbos kederach shema mashmash b'chol. It says Shabbos that sometimes when people were constipated, they would use a stone to help them relieve themselves by opening up the crevices and with a stone, and that would help them get relief. So he says you're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. Also, mashmash b'tzror b'Shabbos kederach shema mashmash b'chol. Just as you do it in a weekday, you're not allowed to do it on Shabbos. It's not a the concern the Gemara is going to talk about later. Either it pulls out hairs or some other concern. So he says you're not allowed to do this on Shabbos. Maskav lo marzuter l'staked. What do you want him to do? That if he needs to go to the bathroom, if he can't go, it's going to be dangerous. So if he can't help himself, what are you going to do? So he says no, he can do it. It just has to do it in a different way with the shinui, with a change. He has to do it with the back of his hand. Amar Rav Yanai, that how many the amount of stones bring in, if there's a set amount of stones, so then a set place for the bathroom, so that he can bring any amount of stones, a set amount, a full handful. Imlav kachreya, but if not, it's the mid size, which is the walnut size. Meducha, ketana shabbos. So sometimes people would designate old used mortal and pestle to the bathroom that people would use instead of stones. So if there was a small one like that, if you see that it's been designated already because it has the telltale signs that it's already been designated for a bathroom, meaning that you can tell that someone's already used it, mutter, then it's going to be permissible to be used on Shabbos. So, and even though that generally it's a vessel that is made for something that you're not allowed to do on Shabbos, for grinding, and grinding is a prohibited act on Shabbos, so the vessel is a kli shemalachta le'iser, a vessel that is prohibited in use. Nevertheless, over here, since it's designated, you're allowed to use it. Now, Reb Kivega points out from elsewhere that we know that a kli shemalachta le'iser, even a vessel that is designated for a non-Shabbos use, such as a hammer, if you're using it for a permissible function on Shabbos, like to open a coconut, that would be permissible. So over here also, even if it's a designated vessel for grinding, why would there be a prohibition that I need to know that it's been designated for the permissible use? So that's a question. So we ask a contradiction. How can you say that something like this can be used if it has the telltale sign on it? But we learned, there are 10 things that are dangerous that can bring a person to tachtonius, which is hemorrhoids. Somebody eats leaves off of reeds, and grape leaves, and some type of grape branch that is off of the vine. And certain parts of the animal that are meats that are sharp. So basically the tongue skin and some of the stomach skins. If he eats it without salt. V'shedra shaldagi eats a fish spine. And a salted fish. So fish that's not been cooked, but rather is being processed in a brine. And isn't fully processed. Somebody who drinks wine sediment, and anybody that uses for cleaning after the bathroom uses either lime or ground up bricks, and or somebody uses an already used pebble stone. So you see that it's dangerous. So how can he use this mortal pestle that's already been used? Some say that even somebody that is crouching, that is not sitting on something in the bathroom, is also going to be dangerous. In any case, we see that using a used stone is dangerous. So it depends. It's already dried. If the evidence that someone else has used it is already dry, so then it's not dangerous anymore. Or you're using the other side of this pestle, which is not has not been used, but you have evidence on it that it's already been used from the other side. Or perhaps on the day of the Chavrei, he himself has already used it, versus if it's dangerous if someone else has used it. If rain fell on the rock or the pestle and washed it off, so the evidence is not there, but you know that it's been used, are you allowed to use this pestle? If it's been discolored enough that you can tell, that's going to be permissible. Rabbi Shela asked Rav Chisda, we're now on Pei Aleph Amud Beis. Is he allowed to bring such stones up onto the roof? Sometimes a person would go to the bathroom, a designated spot for the bathroom, and it would be occupied. And so they'd go onto the roof as an alternate. So what would be halacha? Yes, the dignity and honor of a person is sufficient that it will supersede the Torah prohibition of not contradicting the Chachamim. That even though that generally that we say the Torah says lo saser, that when you have a question in halacha you have to follow the halacha of the Rabbanan. Lo saser asher yigidu chachamim min smol. Do not turn from that which they teach you in any question that you ask them. So over here too, the Chachamim had prohibited the carrying of it up to the roof, either as a muksa, as we said, or as carrying from a rabbinic domain to a private domain. Nevertheless, because of kavod abrius, because of the personal dignity of this person, he'd be allowed to bring it up on the roof. Yosef Merema kamal lashmaita. So Merema repeated this halacha. So Ravina asked him, Rabbi Eliezer, that Rabbi Eliezer says a person is allowed to take a splinter of wood that is in front of him, and he's allowed to use it as a toothpick. The Chachamim say he's not allowed to because it's muktzah, because it's not been designated for anything on Shabbos. So rather, he has to take straw out of or hay out of an animal's trough in order to use as a toothpick. So we see, even though that this is a matter of personal dignity and comfort, nevertheless, he's not allowed to take a muktzah. He's only allowed to take it if it's been designated for something that's permissible on Shabbos. Someone says, Hachi hashta. How can you compare the two? There, a person sets a place for their meal. They know where they're going to eat. They should prepare the toothpicks they're going to need. Is it really a set place for a person in the bathroom? Sometimes he gets a bathroom and it's taken, and so he's going to have to use the roof. And that's why he's going to need to be the kavod abrius, the personal dignity of the person, is going to obligate that he's allowed to bring his needs up there. Amar Avuna. Also, a person is not allowed to relieve themselves in a plowed, in a tilled field on Shabbos. So my time, what's the reason? Is it because when you step on it, you're hardening the soil, which is undoing the tilling of the ground, and now it's going to make it harder for him to seed. So then, even in a weekday, you're not allowed to go into a freshly tilled field because you're ruining the tilling. Rather, because of grass, that because it's been soft, the ground has been softened. Every step you take, you're going to be pulling up some grass. But we know that Rish Lakish said that a rock that has grass growing on it, whether this is moss or there's a crack in the stone and the grass is growing there, either way, mutar l'kanech b'Shabbos. You're allowed to use it for cleaning on Shabbos, even though that some of the grass may get torn off. Nevertheless, it's not a concern on account of that he's not intending for that. However, but if you pull the grass off of that stone with intent on Shabbos, so then that's going to be a chayiv, because that is considered attached to the ground, even though it's in the rock, and the rock itself is detached from the ground. The rock is a part of the ground, and therefore it's going to count as tolish, as detaching from the ground. And chayiv chata said there's a sin offering for that. In other words, it's going to be a Torah prohibition. So, why did he say that you can't go into a plowed field and a freshly tilled field on Shabbos to relieve yourself? So rather, the reason is he may pick up a rock from one of the upper areas. So when you till the ground, it's not flat and smooth, or rather it's bumpy. And if he takes a rock from a higher area and to clean himself, and then when he tosses it, it lands in a lower area, so now he's smoothed out the ground, and then that's going to be the prohibition. Machai mashum and the Rama, and he's going to mechayev like the teaching of Rabba. The Amar Rabba had said, guma v'tamama mebayis chayev mashum boneh. If he had a ditch, a hole, a pit in the ground, and he filled it up. So if it's in the house, and we know the floor on their house was essentially the ground. So in the house, chayev mashum boneh. Now you're building, because it's a part of the structure, and you're smoothing out the ground within a structure. Besadeh chayev mashum choresh, and in the field you're going to be chayev on account of plowing, because you're preparing the field to be smooth and easier to plow. So therefore, that's why Rav Huna said one should not go into the field to relieve themselves on Shabbos, into a freshly tilled field on Shabbos. Gufa. Now we're going to analyze the halacha that Rish Lakish said. Rish Lakish said an interesting halacha. You have a stone that has grass growing out of it, whether this is moss or actually grass growing out of the stone, like a crack in the stone that sometimes it would have grass growing out of it. So Rish Lakish said that pulling out that grass is going to count as tolish, as somebody tearing grass off of the ground and essentially detaching it from its life source, which is harvesting, the Torah prohibition of harvesting. So what we see is that even though that the stone itself is not in the soil, it's above the soil, it nevertheless counts as if the grass is attached to the ground. Gufa, Amar Rish Lakish, and even though he can use it because he's unintentionally tearing off the grass, but if he does so intentionally, he's going to be chayiv chatas. It's going to be a Torah prohibition. Amar of Papi, Shmamin Amid Rish Lakish. So we can learn from this Rish Lakish in a more practical, similar case. Hai parpisa shari l'taltuli. That parpisa, which Rashi in the first version says, is a potted plant that has holes in the pot. So essentially the holes in the pot mean that it is attached to the ground on account of the holes. So even though it's sitting on top of the soil, but the hole in the ground means that the moisture from the ground can get into the potted plant, and from the potted plant into your plant, and so it's considered attached to the ground. Shari little tuli, but you're allowed to move it. just like the stone, you're allowed to move it. It's only if you tear the grass off of the stone that you're going to be chayiv. But the picking up the stone itself is permissible, even though he considers the grass on the stone to be attached to the ground. So to over here, the potted plant, you can lift it up. Maskef Rav Kahana, so Rav Kahana said to him, if it's permissible for a need, then it would be permissible for no need. So here Rashi and Tues both point out, we never permit something for a need if it's a Torah prohibition. The only thing we said before that somebody for covered abrios is permissible is only if it's a rabbinic prohibition. The Rabbanan, when they enacted a prohibition, they enacted it only in a typical circumstance. But in a covered abrios, if it's going to relate to a person's self-dignity, such as needing a stone to carry stone up to the roof of the bathroom, so there it would not apply. So too over here, the picking up of the stone, even though that Rish Lakish said chayiv chatas, it would not mean chayiv chatas actually. It's not a Torah prohibition because it's not really attached to the ground. It's like it's attached to the ground, and therefore it would be a rabbinic prohibition. And chayiv chatas is Tesis actually says it doesn't say that the text should not read chayiv chatas. You're obligated in a sin offering, which is obviously only on a Torah prohibition, or rather chayiv, meaning you transgress the rabbinic prohibition. Rashi says that he does say chayiv chatas, but it doesn't mean that. He's saying it as this is a complete rabbinic prohibition, and therefore for self-dignity, he's allowed to pick up the stone. But just for no reason to pick up a potted plant, if it has a hole, you're picking it up, that's a rabbinic detachment of the ground, and one should not do so on Shabbos.
I would think there's also an aspect of the tzarich mitzvah. He can't daven him. A person has to check himself well to make sure that there's no tzoya that's left on piyat tabas. He can't daven like that. So I would think that what can he do? He's got to daven. He's got to learn Torah. He can't do it with unless he knows he's clean.
Well, you're assuming that he's doing so at a time that he needs to daven. That may be true, but it doesn't need to be that. Even if he doesn't need to daven, he's allowed to simply for self-dignity. Even without that, and this is a permissible thing, simply because of kavod abrios. Abai, parpisa, since you mentioned this parpisa, this potted plant, let me say something about it. If it was on the ground and he picked it up and he put it on top of a peg, so that's going to be tolish. That's going to be chayiv on account of picking it up off the ground. And again, we're not going to say chayiv a biblical prohibition, but rather a rabbinic prohibition. Say this if it was on top of a peg, and he put it down on the ground, he's going to transgress planting. And again, this Rashi says is a rabbinic version of planting. So it's a rabbinic prohibition. So Rabbi Yochanan continues with the cleaning methods and says you're not allowed to use earthenware on Shabbos. My taima, ile mishum sakana. Is it on account of that it's dangerous? Then even on a weekday you're not allowed to. If the concern is using a cheres on Shabbos, then the concern should be even because of danger, because it can cut you or something. So then, even on a weekday, it's prohibited. So rather, on account of black magic, if you use earthenware, some sort of black magic can take hold of you. Well, then it should be prohibited even on a weekday. So rather, it's because it'll tear out hairs. There's no intent for that. He doesn't care about that. And it's not for sure going to happen, so it should be permissible. And this is going to be the same reason we saw before on Amid Aleph, that somebody can't use stones because of removing hairs. Tues says over there, it's going to have to be that it's absolutely going to happen, because otherwise we have the same argument as here, that it should be exempt on account of that it's davar she'eino mischaven. He's not intending to do that. And in general, we say anything that you're not intending to do, unless it's absolutely going to happen, it's permissible on Shabbos, like Rabbi Shimon, because melechas machshavas asur Torah. It has to be an intentional act, and it has to be that something that would happen, or something that would absolutely happen, which would count as your intentional act, because it's going to happen for sure. Well, since Rabbi Yochanan, a great teacher, said something, we have to explain it. For sure, on a weekday, it's prohibited. On a weekday, it's going to be prohibited because you're allowed to take stones. So why are you taking an earthenware? There's no problem with using stones. So why would you take a shard of clay? However, so therefore, for sure, it's prohibited. But on Shabbos, since this shard of clay, this broken earthenware vessel, actually has a function. You could use it to bring up water from a well. You can use it to drink from. There's various uses that you can use, and it's considered a vessel on Shabbos. It's not muktzah. And since it's not muktzah, perhaps it's better to use this, even though that it may have some danger involved. But it's better to use it rather than using a stone which is muktzah. Therefore, Rabbi Yochanan says, Kamash Malan, still, it's dangerous, or it's a danger to black magic, and don't use it even though that it's not muktzah. Don't use it, rather use a stone which is muktzah, because it's better to not be in danger, not to danger yourself for the muktzah. Rava masni la mishum asharas nima. However, Rava says no, the concern is that it'll rip out some hairs. But the question is that Rabbi Yochanan it says elsewhere, we know as a general rule, Rabbi Yochanan says the halach is like stam mishnah, an unattributed mishnah, the halach is like that. And if Rabbi Yochanan over here says you can't use the earthenware vessel because it's going to rip out hairs, well, we know in general that Rabbi Yochanan says halacha like a stam mishnah, which says that you need intent, and if you have no intent, you're not going to transgress. Where did we see Rabbi Yochanan says that? Alma, if he says you can't use this earthenware vessel, so then we see that he holds that even though you don't intend something, it's going to be prohibited. Over here, you don't intend for the removal over here, and nevertheless it'll be prohibited. But generally, we say Rabbi Yochanan holds halach is like a stam mishnah, an unattributed mishnah. And where do we have the unattributed mishnah? Tanan nazir chayfif from a fast face avalosarik. A nazir is not allowed to cut his hair. He's not allowed to remove his hair. But how does he wash his hair? He's allowed to use scrub his hair, and he's allowed to run his fingers through his hair. However, he can't use a comb. A comb is hard, has hard teeth, and it'll tear out hairs for sure. So since it's going to tear out hairs, so you see that only if it's for sure going to tear out hairs, but if it's going to be unintentional, like pulling his fingers through, it's going to be okay. So we see that Rabbi Yochanan holds that it has to be melechas machshavas, intentional things, by a nazir in removing his hairs. The prohibition is only if he intentionally is doing so. Where it's certainly going to happen by a comb, that counts as intentional. Where it's not certainly going to happen, it doesn't count as intentional. So to over here, the concern of removing hairs by cleaning with a earthenware shard should not be a problem. So rather, Rabbi Nassan's explanation on account of that the danger is more appropriate. Micah Shafin. So what kind of black magic are we concerned about here? Like Rav Chisda and Rabbi Ravuna, they were traveling on a boat. They were traveling on a boat. So this matron, and the Gemara brings matrons very often, and Rashi tells us that this is a Roman non-Jewish woman. I don't know if it's the same woman each time or different women. It seems like it would be different because it seems like they may be from different eras. In any case, this matronisa, this matron, Roman matron, said, let me sit down near you. between you. They wouldn't allow her to sit between them. Amra ihi milsa, since you said some incantation, asrasala arba, and they couldn't row the boat. Amrua, it was stuck in its place. Amrua inu milsa, so they said some prayer back. Eshuriyua, and that opened it up, and then it made them able to. So they overpowered her black magic. Amra lahu, so she said to them, Maya avad lahu, what can I do against you? And we'll go to Pei Beis Amud Aleph. You don't clean yourselves with a shard of clay. And you don't kill your lice in your shirts and your garment. And you don't pull out your vegetables from the bundle to eat, rather you untie the bundle. Mikisha dasaganaya, from a bundle that the farmer, that the gardener put together. So we see that these three things are dangerous for black magic, and that's when the wizard or sorceress can play magic against you, and that's why it's dangerous. Rashi over here, in regards to this potted plant, brings from the Gaonim a very interesting concept of this parpisa, of the potted plant, that they used to take a wicker basket made of palm branches, and they would fill it with soil and plant the plant about 2-3 weeks before Rosh Hashanah, and for each person in the family, and then after it started growing, Erev Rosh Hashanah, they would wave it over their heads, and they would 7 times, and they would say, "This plant should be in place of this person," and then they would toss the plant into the river. An early version of kaparas with plants versus what people do today with either money or chickens that you may know about. So it's an interesting early source from the Gaonim done with potted plants, and he says that that's what this parpisa is. And we'll go a little bit further, the beginning of Daf Pei Beis Amud Aleph. Amar Rav Huna Rabba Berei. Rav Huna said to Rabba, his son, "My time in l'shchichas kamei Rav Chisda. Why don't you go learn by Rav Chisda? Why don't you go often to learn by him?" Now it's interesting. Rav Huna and Rav Chisda were essentially colleagues, students by Rav, and Rav Huna, who was elder, became the head of the academy, and Rav Chisda was for a time his student as the head of the academy, even though they were colleagues. Eventually, there was a disagreement between them, and Rav Chisda left Surah to go where the academy was, to go and he started his own offshoot. He went back home. First he didn't have students, and then eventually he did. And it's interesting that Rav Huna is sending his son to study by Rav Chisda. This is the Chachamim who seek truth. Even when there's a disagreement between them, they're still sending their children to go learn by each other. So Rav Huna sent his son. He said, "Why don't you go learn by Rav Chisda?" The Mechaded and Shmaite, his teachings are very clear. Why should I go learn by him? Because when I did go by him, he asks and teaches me words that seem not to be Torah, just empty words about the world. Somebody who goes to the bathroom should not sit down quickly, because that can cause a hemorrhoid. And shouldn't push too hard, also because that can cause hemorrhoids. Because the opening has three teeth, meaning 3 areas, and Dilma Mishtamata Shina de Karkashta, because maybe that will tear it or break it, and it'll cause damage. Basi Desakana can be dangerous. Amalei, so Rav Huna said to Rav Chisda, you're calling this empty words? Words of the world? Amalei, hu asik b'chayid abriyasa. He's dealing with the lives and the health of humans. And you say that it's just worldly matters? For sure, go and learn from him. So Rav Huna is sending his son to learn by Rav Chisda. Tomorrow we'll continue with this Gemara about these halachas.
Yeah.